Hey, it's actually Friday when I'm doing this, Friday morning, right before lunch actually. I've been running a little bit behind this week trying to catch up on some other things, doing some work around the house, so I fell behind on the videos and stuff like that. And at first I didn't think I was going to get one of these done, but I figure I've got a little bit of time this morning, so I'll quickly make one up. The first thing I want to talk about is last week's project, and that was the rebar clamp. I thought that this was going to be, I don't know, I didn't have a lot of enthusiasm for the video, and I kind of phoned it in on that. So that would be the reason why it's not as elaborate as my more recent ones. It's just kind of more similar to my older ones. But surprisingly, it did well, and I thank everybody for the comments and liking the video. I've gotten comments, questions asking how strong it is, and I have to say that this one is good for about 4 or 5 inches. You get a lot of pressure before the bar starts to bend. But if you're seriously interested in making these, what I recommend is not using 10mm bar, but use 15mm bar, and that will give you incredible strength, and you could probably get out to about 16, 18, 20 inches before the bar really starts to bend too much. Yeah, it's the nature of the video when I'm doing them to try to do things quickly. As far as adjusting this clamp goes, it is a little bit finicky. It's because it rotates around like this so easily. I find the best thing to do is to push it in tight, then hold it locked into the rod, and then start turning the handle until it starts to clamp on the wood. And then once it starts to clamp on the wood, there's no going back, and it holds it quite well. At this short span, like these 3 pieces of OSB, I'm getting a lot of clamping force right here, certainly enough for a good glue up. Next thing I want to talk about is that I got my mallet from Drew Short, Rocket H wood shop, and boy, it's a big one. When we compare it to my other one, the one I had, you can see it's quite a bit bigger, and it's a bit thicker, and it's definitely heavier. So I can really lay a beating on something with this one. Once again, thank you, Drew, for sending that out. I really appreciate it, and I know I'm going to get a lot of good use out of it in the future. It says in the title, this week I'm going to be talking about my vices, and that's not talking about my weaknesses. That's talking about my 3 strengths right here on this workbench. The first one is this Wagon vise that I made as part of the bench in the beginning. That was even before I got on YouTube, even actually before I started watching YouTube. I built this bench and built this vise. There is a simplified plan of the bench, a SketchUp plan, including the vise itself on my website, and there'll be a link to that in the description. I have to admit that I don't use this vise very much because I generally don't use a lot of hand tools. But when I do use it, I certainly appreciate it because it's hard to replace this type of a vise. Now, I've got these wooden dogs here that I made. They actually have a little wooden spring built in. They fit in the square dog holes that are angled forwards by 2 degrees. The details, once again, are in the plan on my website. And they slide in as far as you want them to go. And then I've got another one right here in the vise itself. And with those, I can clamp a piece of wood tightly between them. I mean, really tight. And then I'll whip out my little block plane here and do some crazy planing. Look at that. There's nothing more fun than planing wood. Look at those shavings. I gotta get out my micrometer and measure how thin those are. Look at that. Beautiful. So that's my Wagon vise. That was built into the bench a year or more. I guess about 1.5 years, maybe a year. I'm not sure about the dates. I'm not good with dates. I made this vise here, and the key feature of this vise is that it's a quick release. And I've got a lever underneath here that I open, and then I open the jaws up to about 13 inches. That's the capacity. Then I lock the handle and can use the screw to tighten in. It really works well. And it's the vise, up until recently, that I use the most. The vise is not easy to make, I'll admit, but I did make a very detailed plan that's available on my website to build it if you want to. The vise uses very common parts and no real special materials. It does use a 1-inch threaded rod. People have asked me where I get this. Your best bet to getting a 1-inch threaded rod is to go to a place that sells automotive parts, or a specialty supply place that sells industrial supplies to companies and stuff that still sell to retail. The other parts are common from the hardware store. These are actually floor flanges for 1-inch pipe, or I think that's 3/4 inch pipe, and that's 3/4 inch steel pipe threaded into these, and those act as the guide for the vise. This plate is actually a plate from a lolly column, an adjustable jack post. I just drilled out the hole oversized for the rod to go through. The handle is a 1-inch dowel that I made on the router table using a 1/2-inch radius roundover bit, and then I capped it on the end with 3/4 inch plywood that's been rounded over as well. The hub here is a piece of maple that's about 3 inches diameter and about 6 inches long. Now, I've had comments from people saying they think that this is too long, it sticks out too far. I gotta be honest that I have not found that to be a problem. Besides that, you could shorten it up some. I made this long just because I like the way it looked. The other question is, how strong is it? I don't get this question as much on this one as I do on my other vise, the one I'm going to show next, but I still get asked it. How strong it is, will it break, the sound that it makes when it's coming in and out, does that wear out the threaded rod? The answer to that particular question is no, that doesn't wear out the threaded rod. That's just the tips of the threads rubbing on the inside of the nut. They do absolutely nothing to the grip that the rod has on the nuts. As for strength, it's quite strong. I actually used it in my table saw rebuild to push the new bearing onto the arbor, and it can really exert a lot of force. But these days, the vise that I use the most is this one right here. Since I've built it, it's become invaluable in the shop. I don't hardly ever use that vise anymore, and of course I really don't use this one over here that much anyway. So how strong is it? It's strong enough to hold things in. That's what vises do. It's obviously not made for beating on. You're not going to be able to put a piece of 3/8 inch steel in here and then bend it over type thing. You're going to wreck the jaws. I'm sure that you could bend the steel. That wouldn't be a problem. It's just you're going to do some damage to the wooden parts. Now, if I were to replace these jaws with steel ones, then you would be talking about a different situation. And I think it would be quite capable of bending over steel and whatever you wanted to do. But for my needs, this is perfect. It holds the parts that I want to work on. It holds them really well. You can really torque it down, and there's no chance, I'm actually moving the bench here, no chance of the part moving. Another observation made is that it's quite loose here, and someone asked me if I was going to do anything to shim it, to take up that slack. And you go and look at any vise that's this type of vise, and you're going to have slack there. You want to have a little bit of slack, not only for freedom of movement in and out, but also to conform to uneven surfaces here in the jaws. So if you put a wedge-shaped piece in here, it can actually conform to that a little bit. Now, I'm not talking about a radically wedge-shaped piece, but something that's slightly out, and then it'll tighten in against it because you've got a little bit of slack here. I've been asked quite a lot if there are plans available for the vise, and it is on the list of things to do. I will be making plans for it eventually. I don't know how detailed they are, whether they're going to be free or whatnot, I don't know. The thing is, it takes time to make detailed plans. A lot of the plans that I have for free are ones that are like my working copy type thing that I made up while I was doing the project to work out the details. And I didn't go any further with them. I didn't put any detailed dimensions in or anything like that. And that doesn't take very long. Whereas the ones that I actually charge money for are very detailed. There's a lot of time, not only in putting the plans together, but actually doing the project to make sure that it is 100% correct. Because you don't want people, you know, buying a plan, trying to put something together, and then it doesn't work. That's no good. Of course, I've got another vise here, but I don't put it in the same class as those. This is a drill press vise that I use on the drill press, obviously. And it's made from wood, and it is on my website also. And there's a free plan for it if you want to do this. One thing about it is that this particular one, I used a C-clamp, an old C-clamp that I had that I never used to make this vise, and thereby made use of something that I wasn't ever going to use. I never use C-clamps because it takes so long to adjust them. Now that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching as usual. Tomorrow I have a new video coming out, and it is on yet another clamp. Are you sick of clamps yet? No?